Millionaire CEO falls for a VIP guest, not realizing she's just the cleaning lady. What he did next shocked everyone. She didn't dress like the others that night. No diamonds, no silk, just a uniform stitched with her name, and gloves that still smelled faintly of bleach. He raised a glass of champagne and called her costume incredible. She smiled because telling the truth would have broken the spell. For the first time in years, someone looked at her like she mattered. And even if it was all a mistake, it felt good to be seen. The week after the wedding was the quietest Emily could remember. Not because life stopped asking, but because, for once, she didn't have to prove anything just to be loved. They didn't go on a honeymoon. Instead, Gabrielle and Noah helped her paint the back room of the community center, the one she was converting into a creative learning space. Gabrielle spilled a full can of mint green paint. Noah stepped in it barefoot and called it abstract architecture. And Emily just laughed. Because nothing was perfect. But everything was true. Some nights, they still sat on the back steps long after everyone else had gone. One evening, Gabrielle brought out a framed photograph, wrinkled, worn. It was from the masquerade party, the first one, the one where he mistook her for a guest. In it, she was holding a mop, he was holding a glass. They were laughing. She studied the image, then whispered, "Funny how a lie became the beginning of the truest part of my life." Gabrielle nodded, quiet, and pulled from his jacket pocket a folded note. "You once told me you were scared of being invisible," he said. "I wrote this the night after I lost you the first time. I never gave it to you." He handed it to her. It read, "I don't love you because you were strong. I love you because even when the world tried to break you, you bent, laughed, and then created something beautiful from the pieces." He folded the paper and held it to her heart. No words, just understanding. His home, ha. They built a small porch swing together. It creaked. They planted tomatoes in repurposed soup cans. They grew crooked, but somehow that swing and those tomatoes made everything feel more grounded than any skyscraper ever had. Years later, when people asked Emily how it all happened, how the girl with the mop ended up designing spaces, writing books, and marrying a man once too powerful to hold anything gently, she always said the same thing. Echoed, "It started with a mistake, but the miracle came when neither of us ran from it." Some people will only see where you came from. They'll call you names tied to jobs you outgrew, mistakes you made, silence you survived. But you're not here to prove anything to them. You're here to build something beautiful from what they never bothered to see. Because love, the kind that stays, doesn't ask for perfection. It just asks for presence. And sometimes, the most honest kind of forever begins with a floor that needed cleaning and a heart that never stopped believing. If you've ever felt unseen, if you've ever been mistaken, underestimated, overlooked, or left out of someone else's story, let this be your reminder. You are not what you were called. You are what you chose to become anyway. Tell us below, what are you building from the pieces they left behind? Because your story isn't over. In fact, it might just be beginning. Chapter 1. One Night Pretend. The elevator in Northbridge Tower didn't hum, it glided. It was the kind of silence only the very rich knew how to afford. Polished chrome, frosted buttons, no music, just anticipation. Emily Lane stood in the center of it, trying not to sweat. Her sneakers were scrubbed clean, but they squeaked faintly with every shift of her weight. She wore her neighbor's turtleneck, tucked carefully into her best jeans, and a thin coat she'd ironed at 2 a.m. when she couldn't sleep. 42 floors up. A digital chime announced her arrival. The doors slid open like a secret. She stepped into a lobby more expensive than her entire neighborhood. Leather furniture no one sat in, a reception desk made of stone, views of Chicago so pristine they didn't look real. The receptionist smiled. "Miss Lane?" Emily nodded. "He's expecting me." "Go right in." She didn't expect the office to look like that. No giant desk, no dark paneled walls, just floor-to-ceiling windows, sharp angles, and a man in a gray suit, standing with his hands in his pockets, staring at the city like it owed him something. Gabriel North turned as she entered. He didn't smile, but he didn't frown either. His expression was unreadable, calm, calculated. "Emily Lane," he said. "Gabriel North." She mimicked his tone and he blinked, almost surprised. He motioned to a seat. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't exactly in a position to decline." Something flickered in his eyes. Was it guilt? Amusement? He sat across from her, folding one leg over the other. "That video, it's everywhere." "I've noticed," she replied. "People at the grocery store asked if I do private parties." That caught him. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "And do you?" "I'm considering it. My mop is very charismatic." He actually laughed, brief, low, surprised. Emily leaned back, watching him. "So, what am I doing here, Mr. North?" "I want to offer you a job." That wasn't what she expected. "I have a new corporate space being built downtown," he said. "I need someone to lead the creative redesign, someone who understands functionality, practical beauty, simplicity." "You want me," she said slowly, "to decorate your billion-dollar building?" "I want you," he replied, "to design it." She blinked. "I have no formal training." He nodded. "I know. No certifications, no degree. I didn't even finish the last semester community college because my mom got sick. And I know all of it, Emily." That stopped her cold. He leaned forward. "I watched that video more than once. Not because of the mop, but because you stayed calm, confident. You played along, you improvised, and you never once looked like you were trying to impress anyone." She swallowed. "I've built this company surrounded by people who wear masks every day," he said. "But you told a better story by not telling the truth." "I didn't lie," she said softly. "I just didn't correct you." He nodded again. "I respect that." There was a long silence. Outside, the city moved. Cars, clouds, money changing hands. But inside, time seemed to pause. Finally, Emily exhaled. "How much does it pay?" Gabrielle raised an eyebrow. "You mean, if we're going to be decorating your skyscraper in between grocery runs and therapy appointments for my mom, I need to know if this is a passion project or a paycheck." He didn't blink. 5 times what you make now. Full benefits. Independent contract with creative control." She almost laughed. "Are you serious?" "Deadly." She leaned forward, pressing her hands to the cool glass of the table. "What if I mess it up?" "Then you'll mess it up," he said simply, "but I don't think you will." He stood, walked to the windows again. "I've spent years designing buildings people don't live in. Cold, efficient, impressive structures that don't make anyone feel anything. I'm tired of that. I want warmth. I want honesty. I want something people actually want to walk into." He turned, eyes steady on hers. "I think you know how to build that." Emily stared at him, heart loud in her ears. And for reasons she didn't fully understand, she nodded. "All right, but just so you know, my favorite color palette is anything that doesn't stain easily." He gave the smallest smile. "Welcome to the project." The next morning, she arrived at Northbridge with her hair pulled into a high bun, holding her only nice tote bag filled with a notebook, a lunch she packed at 6 a.m., and her lucky pen. People stared, some curious, some amused, some skeptical. She heard the whispers. "That's her, the mop girl. She's got to be sleeping with him. No way she got here on talent." She kept walking. Gabriel introduced her to the team in a conference room that smelled like polished wood and power. "This is Emily Lane," he said. "She'll be leading the creative redesign for our new flagship space. She reports directly to me." That shut up the room real quick. One man in a blazer too tight sneered, "With all due respect, Mr. North, she has no background." Gabrielle didn't even flinch. "With all due respect, she has better instincts than most of you." Emily tilted her head. "Also, I know what an actual employee bathroom looks like." There were a few reluctant chuckles, but mostly silence. Later, she met Laurent Duval, the French architect. He looked at her like someone had spilled wine on his portfolio. "You are the cleaning girl?" he asked, incredulous. Emily smiled sweetly. "And you must be the one who picked this carpet." He scowled. She leaned closer. It looks like it's already been vacuumed by regret. From that day forward, she made her mark. Plants in the hallways, modular desks to invite movement, soft lighting in break rooms, pops of orange in strategic places because, as she explained, nobody falls asleep near orange. It wasn't easy, it wasn't pretty, but it was real, and slowly the whispers changed. She actually has good ideas. She sees things no one else notices. She listens, and every now and then Gabriel North appeared in the doorway. Silent, watching. Sometimes he stayed just long enough to hear her mock the wall paneling or tell someone that plastic chairs were an insult to creativity. And sometimes, when no one was looking, he smiled. Emily saw it and pretended not to. Because this wasn't a fairy tale. It was a job, a chance, a new beginning. But still, some nights, when she washed off the dust and stared at her ceiling covered in post-it notes and secondhand stars, she'd remember that first dance, that first smile, that moment when she lied and somehow felt more honest than she ever had in her life. And in the quiet, she'd whisper to the darkness, "Don't I pretend?" That's all it was. But even she didn't believe that anymore. Chapter 2, The Job Offer. It took exactly 2 weeks for everything to change again. Emily arrived early every morning, tote bag in one hand, thermos of cheap coffee in the other. She took the elevator to the 27th floor, where the redesign project was headquartered, and sat at a long table between professionals with degrees from MIT and Columbia. They talked in acronyms, she talked in colors. They used terms like bio-integrated visual cues and space fluidity dynamics. Emily called it, "Does this room make people want to breathe or scream?" And somehow, over the course of days filled with layouts, mood boards, and debates over carpet textures, she became someone worth listening to. Not just for her ideas, but for her presence. She was direct, funny, grounded, and she asked questions no one else did, like, why are we spending $5,000, 0 cents on chairs no one wants to sit in? It didn't take long for word to spread through the upper floors. She's different, they said. She's bold. She's probably temporary. Because even now, no one knew what she was. Not an intern, not a designer, not technically anything with a title or a box to put her in. Until Gabriel made it official. The meeting wasn't scheduled, it was instinct. He showed up at her floor mid-morning, walked past the glass walls, and knocked lightly on the edge of her desk. "You have a second?" She looked up from her sketch pad, blinked twice, and stood so fast her chair nearly toppled. Sure. He led her to a side office, closed the door behind them. It was quiet, all steel and glass, and sunlight bouncing off distant skyscrapers. "I wanted to talk to you about the project," he said, hands in his pockets again, like he was trying not to look too formal. "You've been doing incredible work. Everyone's said so." "Even Laurent?" she asked, smirking. He chuckled. "He said your presence is disruptive." High praise. Gabriel stepped closer. "Which is why I want to extend your role, make it official. Title, salary bump, benefit." She blinked. "So, no more off-the-books Cinderella designer? No more glass slippers," he said, "unless you want them." Emily crossed her arms, studying him. "Why me?" He didn't hesitate. "Because you bring something into this building that's been missing since it opened. Honesty, heart." She rolled her eyes. "You're making me sound like a Hallmark card." He smiled. "I'm serious." And he was. Gabriel North, the man who built towers higher than his reputation, was standing in front of her, no mask, no performance, just a man trying to give someone a shot. Emily looked down at her hands, calloused from years of scrubbing, lifting, carrying, wiping. "You really think someone like me belongs here?" His answer came quietly but firmly. "I think someone like you belongs anywhere you damn well want to be." It silenced the part of her that still flinched when people asked what she did for a living. "I'll think about it," she said, voice soft. He nodded. But before she turned to leave, she asked, "Gabriel, what if this is just another costume party?" He looked at her for a long time. "It's not," he said, "and if it ever starts to feel like one, just bring the mop." The official offer came later that day. In writing, with a letterhead and everything. Position: creative consultant, interiors, Northbridge Enterprises. Contract length: 6 months. Pay: 5 times her former monthly salary. Benefits: medical, vision, dental, and unlimited coffee. She signed it with a pen that ran out halfway through. Typical. But when she held the contract in her hands, something deeper stirred in her chest. It wasn't just pride, it wasn't just relief. It was the quiet realization that she hadn't tricked anyone to get here. She'd just finally been seen. The weeks that followed passed in a blur of momentum. Emily redesigned floor layouts using recycled materials. She sourced local artists to create affordable wall installations. She convinced upper management to swap their closed-door offices for shared modular spaces. Her ideas saved money. More importantly, they made people happier. She didn't just design rooms. She gave people permission to exist in them. One day, during a break, she found herself eating lunch in the sunlit lounge, flipping through samples, when a small voice piped up beside her. "Excuse me, do you know where the bathroom is?" She looked out. Noah North. She recognized him from the staff photo on Gabriel's desk. Same eyes, same quiet boldness. Emily smiled. Down the hall, past the plant that looks like it's judging everyone. He giggled. "That's the angry fern." "I know," she whispered. "I named it." Noah's backpack slipped from his shoulder. "You're the funny lady my dad talks about." She froze. "Oh? Yeah. He says you're different." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Is that a good thing?" "I think so," he said seriously. "He smiles more when you're around." Emily looked away for a second, feeling something tighten in her chest. "Are you hungry?" she asked, changing the subject. Noah nodded. She pulled a banana and a granola bar from her bag. "Trade you for a joke." Noah grinned. "Deal." Later that day, Gabrielle found them laughing at a whiteboard where Emily had drawn a stick-figure dinosaur wearing a tie. "She's a project manager," Emily explained. "Very intense." Gabriel tilted his head, amused. "And the tie?" "Symbolizes emotional repression." He laughed, really laughed, and for a moment Emily saw the man beneath the empire, the one who didn't have to perform. Their eyes met. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It was something deeper, something forming. Recognition, respect, curiosity. Like they were each walking into a room they hadn't designed, but wanted to stay in. And outside the window, the skyline flickered. Like it, too, was watching something new begin. Chapter 3. The 42nd floor. The elevator to the 42nd floor was quiet, but the silence inside Emily's chest was louder. This was no longer a one-night fantasy. She had a title. A badge. A laminated ID card that felt like a fragile miracle hanging around her neck. But the higher the floor, the colder the stairs. By week 3, Emily had memorized every corridor of Northbridge's headquarters, and every comment whispered behind glass walls. "She's not qualified. She was a cleaner. Bet she got that job on her knees." She laughed when she was alone, the kind of laugh that's sharp around the edges and tastes like pride trying to disguise pain. She remembered what her mother used to say when the world looked down on her. "They're not judging you, baby. They're judging the part of themselves they're too afraid to live with." But that didn't stop the sting, especially when it came from Laurent. He always found a way to remind her. "This isn't a flea market, Miss Lane," he said one morning, flipping through her layout mock-ups. "You don't decorate billion-dollar floors with ideas you find in back-alley thrift stores." Emily smiled sweetly, the kind that warned storms were coming. "Well, Laurent, you don't inspire creativity by sucking the air out of a room, but here we are." Snickers echoed behind her. One of the junior architects scribbled something and muttered, "Roasted." Laurent's face reddened, but Gabriel's voice interrupted before he could fire back. "She reports directly to me." Everyone turned. Gabriel stood in the doorway. Tie loosened, sleeves rolled. "And her ideas," he continued, walking in, "have increased team productivity by 12%. So if anyone has a problem, I suggest you bring better numbers. Or better furniture." Laurent clamped his mouth shut. Gabriel looked at Emily. A word. She followed him into the hallway, where sunlight spilled across glass like melted gold. "I'm sorry," he said once they were alone. I should have stepped in sooner. She waved it off. I've handled worse. You should have seen the soccer moms at my last cleaning gig. Brutal. He smiled. Still, no one questions my choices unless I let them. Emily tilted her head. Then maybe stop letting them. Silence. It wasn't awkward. It was loaded, like something just below the surface was knocking. Gabriel's phone buzzed. He checked it. Meeting with investors. Go, she said. I'll stay here and make more enemies with charm. He paused, then leaned in. You're doing better than you think. She didn't respond. Because something in the way he said it made her afraid to breathe too loud. That afternoon, Emily took the long way home. Her tote bag dug into her shoulder. Her ID card flipped in the wind like a badge and a dare. She didn't go to the train station. She walked. Past stores she couldn't afford, past cafes where the sugar packets were stacked like art, past a woman carrying a purse that cost more than Emily's trailer. She walked until her feet hurt, until her thoughts quieted, until she stopped seeing herself through their eyes and remembered the girl who used to dream while scrubbing baseboards. Back at home, her mom was on the couch with a crossword puzzle and Spud curled at her feet. Long day? Lorraine asked. Emily collapsed beside her. Long decade. Her mom looked at her gently. You're standing taller, you know. Emily snorted. It's the heels. I borrowed them from Nina next door. My ankles are crying. No, Lorraine said, patting her hand. It's not the shoes. It's the knowing. Emily frowned. Knowing what? That you're becoming who you were always meant to be. Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. Is it supposed to feel this lonely? Her mother's eyes softened. No, she said, but sometimes the climb is quiet before the view. The next day, Emily returned with sharper eyeliner and softer steps. She worked late, sketching color palettes, mapping communal lounges with notes like human first design, and let this space breathe. She didn't notice the time. Not until a voice behind her said, You always forget to eat. Gabriel. He held a brown bag and 2 coffees. She looked up, surprised. That's terrifyingly accurate. Come on, he said, let's take the stairs. They sat on the emergency landing between floors 41 and 42, cross-legged like kids on a playground. He handed her a sandwich. Egg salad with too much mustard. How did you know? She asked, laughing. You mentioned it once, during a carpet argument. She raised an eyebrow. You were listening? I always listen, he said. A pause. Then she asked the question that had been pressing on her ribs for days. Why me? Gabriel was quiet, then answered without looking at her. Because you walked into my world like you had nothing to prove. And somehow you made me realize I've spent most of my life pretending I had nothing to hide. She didn't speak. Because truth doesn't always need words. She just took a bite of her sandwich and offered him the last half. He accepted it. And they sat there in the stairwell, sharing dinner and silence like it meant something more than either of them were ready to name. But the walls were thin, and the whisperers would come, because nothing that grows in the light escapes the shadows. Not in this building, not in this world, and especially not for a woman who started at the bottom, then had the audacity to rise. Chapter 4, More Than She Seemed. The elevator dinged open at floor 27, but Gabriel didn't step out right away. He watched her from the doorway instead. Emily, cross-legged on the floor with color swatches spread around her like petals. Her hair was tied up messily again, a pencil tucked behind one ear, and she was arguing with a blueprint. You're not listening to me, she muttered to the paper. You're cold, lifeless, and you don't have to be. Gabrielle almost smiled. Then she saw him. Please tell me you're here to fire me, she said without missing a beat. Because if I stare at another gray-on-gray concept, I might throw myself out a window. He stepped inside, holding a cup. I come bearing offerings. She took the coffee with a suspicious squint. What's the catch? No catch, he said, sitting beside her. Just curiosity. She looked at him, eyebrows raised. Curiosity? I've run this company for over a decade, and not once has anyone asked me if a room feels lonely. Emily chuckled. That's because you surround yourself with men who care more about acoustics than atmosphere. And women like you are hard to find? She looked away, not because she was embarrassed, but because compliments, real ones, had always made her feel like she was standing on thin ice with bare feet. You know, I didn't grow up in this world, right? She said softly. Gabriel tilted his head. What gave it away, the fact that you call $12.00 lattes a financial crime? She smiled, but only for a second. Sometimes I feel like this is all going to vanish, she whispered. Like I'm going to blink and I'll be back in my uniform, scrubbing confetti off ballroom tiles. Gabriel leaned closer. You're not here by accident, Emily, and you're not temporary. She met his eyes. That sounds like a promise. It is. And then he added, more gently, you're more than you seem. That evening, Emily stayed after hours, finishing a layout near the East Conference Room when she heard footsteps. Quick, light ones. Miss Emily? She turned. Noah stood there, holding a poster board twice his size. Hey buddy, she said, kneeling down. What you got? He flipped the board around. It was a model of a city park, made from old shoeboxes, pipe cleaners, and soda caps. This is my project for school, he said proudly. Dad said you used to decorate things. Can you help me make it look cool? Her heart melted in a way she didn't expect. They spent the next hour cutting paper, gluing down trees, and turning buttons into playground swings. Noah talked nonstop about stars, dinosaurs, and the weird smell in the executive bathroom. Gabriel showed up right as Emily was teaching Noah how to make a paper fountain. His eyes softened at the sight of them, his son glowing in the presence of someone who listened not out of duty, but joy. You two okay in here? He asked. Noah nodded. Miss Emily's cooler than most grown-ups. Gabriel looked at her. Yeah, he said quietly. She is. The next morning, the whispers doubled. She's playing house with the boss's kid now. Must be nice, getting paid to babysit. He's climbing. Emily ignored it, or tried to. But sarcasm only hides so much. And the cut of cruelty, even when whispered, always finds its way under the skin. At lunch, she found herself back in the stairwell. Same step, same thermos. Alone. Until a voice called down, Mind if I join? Gabriel. He carried 2 sandwiches, same as before. Your assistant says you haven't eaten. Emily accepted the food, but didn't say thank you. Not yet. Do you hear what they're saying? She asked quietly. Gabriel nodded. Yes. You mean not gonna say anything? He hesitated. Would it matter if I did? She looked at him sharply. Yes? Then softer. I'm not ashamed of where I come from, Gabriel, but I am tired of people assuming the worst about me. His voice lowered. They are threatened. Good, she snapped. Let them be. But you're supposed to be different. I am, he said, more firmly now. But I've spent a long time learning to be quiet to survive. I'm trying to unlearn that. With you. Emily's anger faded into something heavier. Not forgiveness yet, but understanding. And then he said it. I'm proud of you. It hit her deeper than it should have. Because no one had ever said that to her. Not like this. Not without conditions. She looked away, blinking fast. I should go back, she murmured. Gabrielle nodded, but as she passed, he gently touched her wrist. Emily. She stopped. If I ever fail to stand up for you, I want you to call me out. She smiled faintly. Oh, don't worry, I will. The next few weeks passed like wind, fast, unseen but changing everything. Together, they transformed the office. Old walls became windows. Isolated cubicles became open space. Harsh lights were swapped for warm tones, art, plants, personality. And the people? They began to change too. Emily found herself being asked for advice, included in discussions, consulted like she mattered. And slowly, without realizing, she started to believe it was true. She belonged. Not because of charity, but because she'd earned it. Because she was more than she seemed. Chapter 5. The Fall. It was a Thursday when the ground shifted. Emily was in the central conference room presenting her final renderings for the community lobby on the 42nd floor. A space designed with benches made from reclaimed wood, rotating art from local schools, and a corner called the pause room. She spoke clearly, confidently. Even Laurent stayed quiet, his arms crossed, lips tight, but eyes focused. When she finished, the room gave polite applause. Gabriel, seated at the end of the table, nodded once. "Perfect," he said. "It's what this building has always needed." Emily felt the warmth of something rare, being respected in the room where decisions were made. She was still smiling when she stepped into the hallway, only to find the receptionist pale, holding her phone out like it was a weapon. You should see this," the woman whispered. Emily took the phone, and there it was. Breaking news: Northbridge CEO's secret romance with cleaning staff exposed. Sources claim she was promoted in exchange for affection. The article was slick, cruel, laced with half-truths and outright lies. There was a photo, Emily and Gabriel outside the office, laughing. She remembered the moment. She had said something about the elevators being designed by sad robots. They made it look like intimacy. The comments were worse. Gold digger in sneakers. Sleeping her way to the top. She had a mop and a mission. She couldn't breathe. She stumbled toward the restroom, locked the door, and sat on the closed toilet lid, the screen burning into her palm. And just like that, she was nothing again. No designs, no ideas, no worth. Just a scandal, a punchline. A girl who was foolish enough to believe she could belong. She stormed into Gabriel's office an hour later. He was at his desk, scrolling through a tablet. "So," she demanded, "what's the plan? A lawsuit? A statement?" He looked up calmly, too calmly. "We're monitoring it. PR says it'll pass." Emily froze. "It's a gossip leak, Emily. We don't feed fires." "You think this is just gossip?" she snapped. "Gabrielle, they're dragging me through the dirt, calling me a whore in office lighting. You think I can just keep showing up while people speculate about how many favors I traded for a paycheck?" His expression tightened. "I understand. You're upset." "No, you don't," she interrupted. "You're not the one being reduced to a rumor. I'm not asking for damage control. I'm asking for you to stand beside me." Gabrielle stood, slowly. "I don't owe the press my personal life." Emily took a step back like he'd slapped her. "Oh, I see. You'll share coffee with me in the stairwell. You'll let me teach your son how to build paper trees, but when the world asks if I belong in your story, you stay quiet." "Emily?" She shook her head. "No, you want to keep me close, but only if it doesn't cost you anything." The silence between them fractured like glass under weight. Then she whispered, "You didn't hire me because I was good. You hired me because I was convenient." "That's not true." "Then why won't you say it out loud? That you believed in me before the world did?" Gabriel didn't answer, and this time his silence said everything. Emily walked out of his office without looking back. 42 floors down. The security guard tried to speak to her. She kept walking. On the street, people stared. A man pointed. A woman whispered behind a phone. At the corner newsstand, her face stared back from a tabloid. From mop to mistress, the Cinderella lie. She turned and ran. Not to her trailer. Not to her job. To nowhere. To somewhere quiet. To anywhere that didn't smell like betrayal and a $10,000 zero-cent suit. Mrs. May found her the next day. She knocked gently on Emily's trailer door, holding a paper bag of warm muffins and a folded newspaper. "He didn't say a word, dear," the older woman said gently. "Not to them, not to anyone. Let the story die," they said. Emily bit the inside of her cheek. It was a risk, one he wasn't willing to take. Mrs. May placed the muffins on the counter and simply said, "You deserve someone who claims you in daylight." That night, Emily did the one thing she hadn't done since the article broke. She looked in the mirror. Really looked. Not at the tired eyes or trembling lips, but at the woman who had pulled herself up from bleach-stained uniforms and handed down shoes. She was not a rumor. She was not a mistake. She was not someone's shame. She was Emily Lane, and she had a future to reclaim. The next morning, she returned to the one place that never judged her. The community center. She brought fabric samples and colored pencils and started sketching decorations for the kids' corner. Mrs. Ruth brought tea, One of the teens helped her paint shelves. A retired school teacher asked her to help reorganize the library. No one asked about the article. They just saw her. Like always. That afternoon, her phone buzzed. As a reporter. Then another. Then a DM. A woman named Sasha had seen her interview with the community center months ago and wanted to do a feature for a small design magazine. Emily almost said no, but something inside her whispered, "They already wrote their story. Write yours." She agreed. The article went live a week later. Designing Dignity, How One Woman Turned Disgrace into Beauty. It was raw, honest. It quoted her directly. "People called me a cleaner like it was an insult. But you know what cleaners do? They take what's dirty, what's overlooked, what's forgotten, and make it worth something again." The article exploded online. Not because it was viral, but because it was true. And because somewhere in a corner office on the 42nd floor, Gabriel North read every word. And for the first time in years, he realized what he had lost by staying silent. Chapter 6. The Girl Who Walked Alone. Emily Lane became someone new. Not overnight, not in some dramatic movie-stripe montage, but quietly, like spring pushing through cracks in frozen ground. Her name, once whispered in corporate hallways with smirks and sideways glances, was now printed in bold headlines beside words like resilient, visionary, and authentic. The magazine feature about her journey, how she transformed office spaces and recycled shame into something useful, spread far beyond its tiny design audience. People shared it, wrote to her, thanked her. A teacher in Vermont emailed, "You reminded me why I teach." A young girl in Detroit wrote in pink pen, "I want to be like you when I grow up. I also wear old shoes and still feel special." Even a retired janitor in Florida sent a postcard. "We always knew the mop was a crown." Emily read them all. She replied to as many as she could, but she never once looked up Gabriel North's number. Because no matter how many nights she replayed that final conversation, how he'd stood there in silence as her dignity burned, she couldn't undo what his silence had taught her. When you matter to someone, they speak. And when they don't, they vanish. The community center became her home base again. She repainted the walls with leftover supplies. She taught evening classes on creative living with less. She showed kids how to turn milk cartons into bird feeders and helped tired mothers turn plastic containers into drawer organizers. She called it making do magic. They called her Miss M. A local TV station caught wind of it after one of the volunteers posted a short video online. In it, Emily was tying string around an old jam jar to turn it into a light holder. "You don't need money to feel proud of your space," she said in the clip. "You just need love, creativity, and a good reason to try." The clip went viral within hours. People weren't just watching, they were following. Within a week, Emily was invited to contribute to a weekly column called Design with Dignity. She accepted. And with it, the girl who once scrubbed marble with a mop found herself becoming a voice. Meanwhile, Gabriel North watched it all from a distance. He saw the clips, read the articles, heard the laughter of people gathering in the center, that she rebuilt with words and string and recycled belief. And still, he said nothing, until one night Noah came home from school, holding a crumpled paper. "What's this?" Gabrielle asked, taking it from him. "It's a list of things that make me feel safe," Noah said matter-of-factly, plopping down on the couch. "Miss Emily told us to write them." Gabrielle stared at the list. It read, "Things that make me feel safe. My bed. Hot chocolate. Dad when he reads stories out loud. Miss Emily when she smiles and listens. Like I'm the only one talking." Gabriel folded the page slowly, and for the first time since the article broke, he whispered, "I should have protected her." Noah looked up. "I told you that weeks ago," he said, then added, "You're a little slow sometimes." Gabriel laughed softly. "I know, buddy. I know." Then he stood, walked to his office, and picked up the phone. The next day, the community center phone rang. Mrs. Ruth answered. "Community of hands, how may I—" "Oh, yes, she's here, hold on." She covered the mouthpiece. "It's for you. Fancy voice. Probably a lawyer or a landlord." Emily took the phone cautiously. "Hello? Emily Lane," said the voice. "This is Monica Reyes. I work for Grant Publishing." Emily blinked. "I'm sorry? We saw your interview on WGN, the local network. The way you spoke about space, shame, and survival, our board was moved." "Moved? How?" Emily asked slowly. "We'd like to offer you a book deal, a short non-fiction title, something raw and honest. Your story, your insights, designing with dignity. Are you interested?" Emily was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "Yes, I am." That night, she sat on the edge of her trailer bed, holding the phone in her lap. She didn't call Gabrielle, not even then, because healing wasn't about waiting for someone to circle back. It was about moving forward, even when they didn't. But fate, as it always does in stories like this, wasn't finished. 3 days later, Mrs. Ruth knocked on the storage closet door. "You might want to come out here," she said with a crooked smile. "Why? There's a man here," she said. "Tall, expensive watch. Looks like he's never used a lint roller in his life." Emily frowned. "Did he say what he wants?" "He brought a shelf," Ruth said, grinning, "and a toolbox." Emily's heart skipped. She walked into the main room and froze. There he was. Gabriel, sweating, kneeling, screwdriver in hand, half cursing a crooked metal bracket. "What are you doing?" she asked, arms crossed. He didn't look up. "Still trying to earn a point?" She raised an eyebrow. "You're installing a shelf." He nodded. "I thought it might be easier than apologizing." Emily walked closer, cautiously. "You let the world think I was nothing." Gabriel stood, wiping his hands on a rag. "You stood silent when I needed you, loud. I know that too. So why now?" He looked her straight in the eyes. "Because I watched you become everything I was too afraid to defend. And because silence may be safe, but love never is." Emily blinked. He stepped closer. "I'm not asking for a second chance, Emily. I'm asking for a chance to be better. For you, for Noah, for myself." She looked at him for a long time, then said, "You're not getting off the hook with shelves and sad eyes." Gabriel smiled softly. "I figured. I brought plants too." She laughed, against her will. "You brought ferns to a community center?" He shrugged. "I thought they might make the walls feel less judged." Emily bit her lip. And in that moment, she saw something different. Not the CEO, not the man who betrayed her with silence, but the man trying to unlearn everything he was taught, just to stand beside her. She didn't say yes that day. Not to anything beyond coffee and maybe a slow walk under rusting street lamps. But something had shifted. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like the girl who walked alone. She felt like the woman who could choose when to walk together. Chapter 7. The Architect of Hope. The next time Gabriel came to the community center, he didn't wear cufflinks. He wore jeans, a soft gray shirt rolled at the sleeves, a paint smear already staining one elbow before he'd even stepped inside. Emily saw him from the supply closet and didn't move. She watched instead. Watched him kneel to tie a little girl's shoelace without being asked. Watched him listen, actually listen, to Mrs. Ruth explain why the craft table was sacred ground. Watched him carry folding chairs without flinching and wipe down tables like a man used to being served, now learning what it meant to serve. He didn't make speeches. He didn't ask for a second chance. He just showed up. And again, and again, and again. Noah came too, always. The three of them became a rhythm. Not a romance, not yet, but a quiet pattern of showing up and showing care. Gabrielle painted walls with the teens. Noah helped sort donated books. Emily ran workshops on creating beauty with trash. Tin cans into vases, cardboard into wall art, plastic bottles into planters. They called her Miss Magic. And slowly they started calling Gabriel Mr. Glue. Because everything he fixed? Still a little crooked. One evening, while Emily was hanging paper lanterns from yarn tied across the beams, Gabriel walked in, holding a piece of paper. He handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked. He pointed at the header. "Land Grant Transfer, the Lane Foundation." She stared. Gabriel spoke softly. I met with my lawyers, moved the land deed out of Northbridge's assets. It's yours now. The community center, legally, cleanly, permanently, with full protections. Emily blinked. You gave it away? No, he said. I gave it back to the people who actually built something here. She looked down at the document, fingers trembling. And you're not putting your name on it? I already have 100 buildings with my name, he said, but this is better. There was silence. Then she whispered, You're not who I thought you were. I'm not who I thought I was either. That night they sat outside under the string lights she'd hung with recycled wire and borrowed ladders. Noah lay between them, tracing constellations with a flashlight. Gabrielle watched Emily's face lit by soft light and shadow. He didn't reach for her hand. But when she reached for his, he let her. And in that quiet, with the hum of insects and the smell of old mulch and hope in the air, Gabriel North finally understood what it meant to build something that couldn't be bought. He was no longer the CEO who had everything. He was becoming the man who had enough. Days passed. Gabriel showed up every Saturday. He installed shelves that leaned slightly left, tables that wobbled, light fixtures that buzzed faintly. But Emily never corrected him, because she saw the effort in every imperfect screw. She saw love, unspoken, steady, and for the first time, she let it be enough. At one weekend event, Small Spaces Big Love, Noah stood at the front with a poster that read, Reuse, Reimagine, Repair. Gabriel handed out paper cups of lemonade. Emily taught a boy how to turn newspaper into drawer dividers. At the end of the day, as the sun dipped low, Gabriel turned to her and said, You're changing people. She shrugged. They were always worth changing for. Then added, So were you. That night, Emily found a note taped to the craft room door. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. You are already what people build stories around. She held it to her chest, then tucked it into her journal beside a folded article and a sketch of the community center, drawn on the back of a receipt. In this place, she wasn't the scandal. She wasn't the cleaner. She wasn't even the miracle. She was the architect of something better. Hope, Chapter 8, where love isn't a secret. The first time Emily realized Gabrielle had changed wasn't during a speech or a grand gesture. It was during a mess. Noah had spilled paint, bright electric blue, across the community center floor. It splashed onto Gabriel's jeans, across his sleeves, even up one side of his cheek. Emily rushed forward with paper towels, prepared to apologize, prepared to clean. But Gabriel just blinked, then laughed. A real, full laugh, the kind that came from the belly and didn't care who was watching. Emily froze. He wiped his hands, shrugged, and said, I needed a new shade of honesty anyway. No defense, no anger, no performance. Just presence. And that was when she knew. Later that day, they sat on the back steps after the kids had gone home. The center buzzed with quiet half-mopped floors, the scent of acrylic and lemon cleaner lingering in the air. Emily handed him a glass of lemonade. He took it without speaking. They sat like that for a long time, not needing noise to make it feel real. Eventually, she broke the silence. Do you ever miss that life? Gabriel looked at her. Which one? The one where your name was all that mattered? He paused, thoughtful. I miss the certainty, the illusion that if I built high enough, I'd never have to feel anything low again. Emily stared out at the patch of garden Noah had planted, a crooked row of sunflowers leaning toward the fence. You never told me why you didn't say anything after the article. Gabriel turned his glass in his hands. I told myself it was strategy, that silence would let the fire burn out. And the truth? He met her eyes. I was ashamed of how quickly I let fear write your story for you. I thought silence would protect us, but all it did was erase you. Her throat tightened. I needed you to say something. I know, he said softly, and I hate that I wasn't brave enough. She let the words sit there, sink deep. I don't need you to save me, she whispered. I know, he replied, but I want to walk beside you when you save yourself. From then on, things were different. Not loud, not labeled, just real. Gabriel started staying late, not as a guest, not as a visitor, but as someone invested. He fixed what he could and asked for help when he couldn't. Emily stopped brushing him off. They talked about his father's distance, her mother's illness, about the loneliness of growing up surrounded by wealth, and the even deeper loneliness of growing up surrounded by nothing. One day, Gabriel brought a box of his son's old clothes for the donation bin. Inside, tucked between two sweatshirts, was a folded note. "Thank you for making my dad laugh like a human again, Noah." Emily kept it, taped it to her wall beside a sketch of a home she hadn't dared to dream of in years. One evening, while painting signs for the upcoming Reuse Revival event, Noah looked up from his glitter project and asked, "Are you two in love?" Gabriel choked on his tea. Emily nearly dropped her brush. "What?" she asked, cheeks burning. Noah shrugged. "You act like it. Dad smiles more. You get quiet when he's around. I read about that in a book." Gabriel cleared his throat. "I think we're still figuring that out." Emily nodded slowly. "Yeah, we're building something." Noah tilted his head. "So, like a love that doesn't need to be a secret?" Emily looked at Gabriel. Gabriel looked back, and for the first time, neither of them looked away. By the time Reuse Revival opened to the public, the community center was transformed. There were glass jars turned into candle holders, old shirts sewn into quilted banners, furniture remade from crates and cushions. The kids wore name tags that said, "Artist." Volunteers wore aprons printed with the phrase, "What was discarded can be designed." Emily walked the floor with paint on her fingertips and light in her chest. Gabriel stayed close, but not in the way he once did. He didn't hover, he supported. A quiet shadow, with warm eyes and unspoken admiration. When the local news anchor asked who had organized the whole event, Emily simply said, "A bunch of people who believed in something better." And one man who decided, "Power means nothing if you can't use it to lift someone else." He didn't say his name, but Gabriel smiled from the back row, because he knew, and for the first time, he didn't need credit to feel seen. That night, they cleaned up together. Noah fell asleep on a beanbag chair covered in fabric scraps and dreams. Emily dimmed the lights. Gabriel wiped the counter in slow circles, his hands steady. "You know," he said, "I've attended fundraisers that cost more than this whole center." She leaned against the doorway, and this meant more. Silence again. Then Emily walked to him. She placed her hand on his, slowly. "You're not my mistake, Gabriel," she said softly. "You were my lesson, but maybe you're becoming my choice." He held her gaze, then lifted her hand and kissed the center of her palm. No promises, no performances, just a beginning. No longer in secret, but in Moonlight. Chapter 9, The Second Storm. It began, as most storms do, with something seemingly small. A cream envelope on Emily's desk at the community center. No name, just a red wax seal and her own name written in precise slanted letters. She opened it without thinking. What she read pulled the air from her lungs. A legal dispute, filed by Harper Kensington, North. Gabriel's ex-wife, claiming ownership over the land Gabrielle had donated, asserting it was part of their unsettled divorce assets. Emily blinked. Read it again. Then again. But the words didn't change. The land her center stood on, her sanctuary, her second chance, her future, was now being contested by a woman who had never set foot on it. Gabriel arrived 30 minutes later, breathless, the paper already in his hand. "She's doing this out of spite," he said, jaw tight. "She doesn't want the land, she just wants to humiliate me." Emily stood with her arms crossed, body stiff as concrete. "You knew this could happen?" she said, not accusing, just realizing. "I didn't think she'd target the center." Emily exhaled slowly, keeping her voice level. "But you should have. You should have warned me. I wanted to protect you from it." "No," she said, eyes flashing. "You wanted to protect yourself from seeing what your past could do to me." Gabrielle fell silent. Outside the windows, kids were planting recycled seed trays. Inside, a storm grew. "This center isn't a gift, Gabriel," she said. It's a foundation, and now it's vulnerable. Again. He stepped forward. I'll fix it. Her voice broke then. That's the thing. You always try to fix things after they break. After the silence. After the damage. Why can't you ever stop it before? His face crumbled. But she didn't stay to see it fully. She turned, stepped outside, and let the door close behind her. Not with a slam, but with the soft finality of trust folding in on itself. That night, she stayed late, sitting in the darkened hall with the legal notice folded in her lap like a confession. Noah wandered in with a flashlight shaped like a raccoon. "You okay?" he asked. She forced a smile. "Just tired." Noah plopped down beside her, back against the wall. "Dad says tired is just another way of saying your heart's been busy." Emily looked at him. He shrugged. "I miss your smile." Tears prickled her eyes. And in the quiet that followed, she realized this wasn't about a building. It was about the cost of trusting someone who didn't know how to fight before the storm hit. The next morning, Gabriel returned. But he didn't come with flowers. Ha! He came with a folder. "This is the new contract," he said. "I worked with my lawyers all night." Emily scanned the pages. Her hands shook. He had established a new nonprofit foundation, the Lane Foundation. Her name on the title. Her rights protected. Independent from Northbridge. Legally untouchable. "I've removed myself from ownership," Gabriel said. "The building, the land, the assets, they're yours now, officially, permanently." Emily looked up. "You did this for me." "I did this because I should have done it before. I don't want to be the man who keeps showing up too late." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She simply nodded, then reached across the table and took his hand. "I believe you," she whispered. "For the first time, I really believe you're trying, not to save me, but to change." Later, after the last meeting, after the last child was picked up, she looked out the window. There on the bench sat Gabriel, Noah beside him, sharing a bag of popcorn, arguing about whether a soda bottle rocket could really break the atmosphere. Emily didn't rush to join them. She simply watched. And for the first time, she felt safe watching him stay. Not because he was trying to win, but because he was finally learning how to stay. Chapter 10, The Man Who Showed Up. It didn't happen with a ring, or flowers, or fireworks. It happened in a hospital. Rain slicked the streets that morning like a warning. Emily was elbow-deep in soil helping the kids plant herbs behind the community center when the call came. "Emily, it's Rachel from Northbridge. Gabriel's been in an accident." The car hydroplaned. He swerved to avoid another driver and hit a guardrail. He was alive, conscious, but in the hospital, room 208. Emily ran. Didn't tell the kids. Didn't clean her hands. Just grabbed her bag and took off through the drizzle. Breath caught somewhere between her ribs and her heart. She didn't realize how much she'd forgiven him, until the idea of losing him made the world stop turning. When she walked into his room, he was already trying to sit up. Bruised, bandaged, a cut above his brow, arm in a sling, but smiling. "Don't say anything yet," he whispered, voice raspy. "I'm going to blame the concussion for whatever I'm about to do." Emily walked to his bedside. "I should yell at you," she murmured, taking in the machines, the quiet beeping. "You nearly scared me to death." He reached for her hand, took it. "I was on my way to bring you coffee," he said, "and cheese bread from that place on Ashland." She laughed, shaky. "You wrecked a car for bread?" "No," he said. "I wrecked it because I was rushing. Because I wanted to get there before you forgot the way I've changed." Silence. And then, so simply, it broke her. "Marry me." No plan, no stage. Just rain outside, antiseptic in the air, and a man with bandages saying the only thing that mattered. Emily exhaled. "Are you proposing in a hospital gown?" He grinned. "It's clean. That's progress." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away. "Yes," she whispered. "But not because of the accident, because of everything before it." They didn't announce it. Not right away. They told Noah first, who screamed so loud a nurse thought someone had flatlined. Then, a week later, they stood in the backyard of the community center. No tux, no gown, just linen shirts, a daisy in her bun, and guests sitting in folding chairs that wobbled slightly when the wind shifted. Emily walked down an aisle made of borrowed rugs. Noah carried the rings in a recycled wood box with their initials carved by hand. Gabriel's voice trembled when he spoke. "I built towers to feel important, but you taught me that love is the only thing that ever made me real." Emily replied, voice steady even through the tears. "I used to think I had to rise from nothing, but now I know I was never nothing. I was just waiting for someone who could see the light I already had." When they kissed, the applause wasn't polite. It was wild, honest, earned. That evening, they sat on the back steps, barefoot, tired, happy. Noah leaned against them, half asleep, fingers still sticky with frosting. Emily whispered, "Do you think stories like ours really happen?" Gabriel replied, "Only when the right people stop pretending they're broken." She smiled, and the stars didn't twinkle. They blazed. The marble floor didn't care who scrubbed it, it never had. At the Ashton estate, it was just another Saturday night. A masquerade ball full of people who wore money like perfume and laughter like armor. They floated through the grand hall, dressed as Greek gods, pirates, and champagne-stained royalty. But Emily Lane wasn't in costume. Her uniform was real. So was the dirt on her knees and the callus growing beneath her right thumb, the one that tightened whenever she gripped a mop. She was crouched beneath a chandelier, elbow deep in a wine stain that refused to fade, when she heard the click of expensive shoes and the scent of cologne that didn't belong in this part of the floor. "Wow," a voice said, amused. "You're really taking the cleaning lady act seriously." She looked up. He stood like a painting someone forgot to frame. Tailored black suit, champagne in hand, and eyes too confident to question themselves. He wore a lapel mask and the faint trace of a dare on his lips. Gabriel North, the billionaire, the CEO, the man who probably never cleaned anything he didn't break first. Emily blinked once, then stood slowly, the mop still in her hand like a sword she hadn't meant to draw. "Well," she said, arching a brow, "I do like to commit to a role." He smirked. "You're the most original guest I've met tonight. Everyone else spent thousands on lace and leather. You brought a broom." "Fought the gardener for it," she replied dryly. "Won the coin toss." His laugh came easy. She didn't know it yet, but it was the kind of laugh that hadn't come out of him in months. Emily had every reason to correct him, to tell him she was staff, that she wasn't invited, that the spray bottle clipped to her apron wasn't a prop. It was the closest thing she had to health insurance. But for some reason she didn't. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, not like she was invisible, but like she was in on the joke. Like she wasn't someone to pity or ignore, but someone worth talking to, laughing with. Maybe it was selfish, maybe it was survival, but that night, just for a moment, she played along. They talked. Nothing deep, nothing real, but it felt real to her. Jokes about vacuum duels, stories about the war between bleach and red wine. When the music swelled, he held out his hand. And she, the girl who never danced without a mop in reach, said yes. She danced in rubber soles while others floated in diamonds. And when he offered her a glass of champagne, real champagne, she accepted it like a child accepting a miracle she wasn't sure she deserved. For 2 hours, she wasn't a cleaner, she was a mystery. A VIP guest he couldn't quite place. A woman who made him forget whatever deals he had signed, whatever walls he had built. And for 2 hours she felt something she hadn't felt in years. When the party ended, she slipped away through the staff hallway, her badge tucked into her apron pocket, her name tag turned backward. She rode the subway home smelling like hardwood polish and lost illusions. The next morning, the headlines found her. Millionaire CEO, mistakes real cleaner for VIP guest. Sparks fly. Cinderella without the glass slippers. From mop to masquerade, who was Emily Lane? A single video clip had gone viral. Gabriel North, laughing with a woman in janitor's clothes, complimenting her mop, toasting her fake name like it was a crown, and Emily smiling like someone who didn't know the whole world was about to notice her. Her phone didn't stop buzzing. Messages, tags, comments. Some kind, most cruel. And then, just after noon, it rang. A woman's voice. Polite, polished. "Miss Lane? Mr. North would like to meet with you tomorrow at 9 a.m. at Northbridge Enterprises. He says, if your second performance is anything like the first, he may have an offer for you." Emily stood in her kitchen, holding the phone with one hand and the edge of the sink with the other. The same sink where she washed dishes after her mom's medications. The same counter lined with bills and reminders. She glanced at her reflection in the spoon resting in the drying rack. "Okay," she said softly. The next morning she wore her best jeans, a borrowed turtleneck, and sneakers she cleaned with a toothbrush. She tied her hair up, applied the lipstick she bought for job interviews and funerals, and took the train to a building that shimmered with every inch she couldn't afford. She didn't expect anything, not really. She just wanted to see if the man from last night was real. If maybe, just maybe, he remembered her as more than a joke. She did know that the joke was about to become something much deeper. She didn't know that behind all the glass, money, and cold elevator steel, there was a man whose life had never been touched by sincerity until she showed up with a mop and a lie.